3 women. 3 different cities. 3 different lives. None of them saw it coming. One trusted the man who said he loved her and woke up with nothing in her name. One spent 11 years taking care of everyone around her and discovered, too late, that no one had been taking care of her. One did everything right, worked hard, stayed quiet, followed every rule, and still walked out of that building with her hands shaking. These are not cautionary tales. These are not tragedies. These are true stories. And if you have ever felt invisible, underestimated, or quietly erased by someone who was supposed to protect you, I need you to stay with me today. Because by the time this video ends, you will understand exactly what happened to these women and why it happens to so many of us. Welcome to Synaptic Truth. Every story fires something new in you. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Her name was Jennifer. She was 43 years old, recently widowed, and living in a 3-bedroom house in Charlotte, North Carolina that she and her late husband had spent 14 years filling with a life. She had 2 daughters, ages 16 and 19. She had a part-time job at a dental practice front desk that she had taken on because it gave her somewhere to be during the hours when the silence of the house became too loud to sit inside. She was not looking for anyone. She had not gone to a single social event in the 8 months since her husband passed. She was still wearing her wedding ring. She was still, on some mornings, making coffee for 2 out of habit before she remembered. That is where Marcus found her. He was introduced to her through a mutual friend at a church potluck dinner that Jennifer had agreed to attend only because her youngest daughter had asked her 3 separate times. He was 51 years old, a commercial real estate developer from the Atlanta area who had recently relocated to Charlotte to oversee a new project. He was tall, soft-spoken, and well-dressed in the way that suggested money without announcing it. He brought a dish to the potluck that he had clearly not made himself, and he laughed about it freely, which Jennifer later told her older daughter was the first thing she had found genuinely funny in months. He asked for her number at the end of the evening. She gave it to him. She told herself it was just to be polite. He texted her the next morning. Not a flirty message, a simple one. He said he had looked up a grief support group at a local church and thought it might help. He included the address. He asked for nothing in return. Jennifer stared at that message for a long time. She did not go to the grief group, but she texted him back. And that was how it started. Within 6 weeks, Marcus was texting Jennifer good morning and good night without fail. Within 2 months, he had met both her daughters, brought flowers to the house on a Tuesday for no occasion, and offered to pay for a leaking roof repair that Jennifer had been putting off because the quote had come in at $4,000 she did not have. She told him she could not accept it. He arranged for the repair anyway and left a card on the kitchen counter that said, simply, "You've been carrying too much for too long. Let someone carry something for you." Jennifer cried reading that card. She kept it. He proposed 11 months after the potluck dinner. It was not a dramatic proposal. He did not rent out a restaurant or hire a violinist. He simply asked her, one evening on the porch, whether she thought she could imagine a life that had happiness in it again. She said she was beginning to think so. He said he wanted to be the reason. He pulled out a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. It was simple and beautiful and looked nothing like something purchased to impress. She said yes. The wedding was small, at the same church where they had met. Her daughters were bridesmaids. Her oldest, whose name was Danielle, had reservations she kept mostly to herself. She had noticed, in the months leading up to the wedding, that her mother had begun checking with Marcus before making plans. Small things at first. Whether to attend a neighbor's birthday, whether to have a friend over for dinner. Marcus never said no outright. He just had a way of sighing, of going quiet, of mentioning that he'd been hoping they could spend that evening together. And Jennifer, who had spent a year learning to navigate grief alone, found it easier to stay home. Danielle mentioned this to her mother once. Jennifer told her that Marcus simply liked spending time together. That was what love looked like. Danielle did not bring it up again. Jennifer had been married to Marcus for 2 years and 4 months when she opened a piece of mail that had been left, uncharacteristically, on the kitchen counter. It was from a mortgage company she did not recognize. The letter referenced a loan taken out against the equity of the Charlotte house, the house she had owned with her first husband, the house her daughters had grown up in, the the house that had been left entirely in her name when she was widowed. The loan was for $220,000. She sat down on the kitchen floor, not because her legs gave out, but because the floor was the closest surface. Marcus had been added to the deed 14 months earlier. She had signed the paperwork herself. He had explained it as a formality, something to do with their joint tax filing, something his accountant had recommended. She had not read the full document. She trusted him. She had been, at the time, on her way to pick up her youngest daughter from soccer practice, and Marcus had laid the papers on the table and pointed to the lines where she needed to sign, and she had signed them. She called the mortgage company from the kitchen floor. They confirmed the loan. They confirmed the signatures. Her name was on every page. She called Marcus next. He answered on the second ring. His voice was calm. He told her the loan was an investment, that he had been planning to tell her, but had wanted to wait until the returns started coming in so he could surprise her. He told her she was overreacting. He told her that she had always been financially anxious and that this was her anxiety talking, not reality. She had never described herself as financially anxious to him. She had never described herself that way to anyone. That was the moment Jennifer understood that she had been studied. She called Danielle. Danielle drove over within 20 minutes. By the time she arrived, Jennifer had found 3 more letters she had not been meant to open. A second loan, smaller, against a joint account Marcus had encouraged her to open after the wedding. A credit card in her name she had never applied for. And a letter from a family court in Atlanta referencing a civil judgment against Marcus from a previous marriage. A judgment that had never come up, not once, in the 11 months they had dated before marrying. Danielle sat across from her mother at the kitchen table and said, "Mom, we need to call an attorney. Tonight." The divorce took 19 months. It was not clean. Marcus contested everything. He told their shared social circle that Jennifer had always struggled with paranoia. He told her daughters that their mother was having a breakdown. He hired an attorney and showed up to every hearing in the same calm, soft-spoken manner that had first made Jennifer find him trustworthy, and she watched, with something close to awe, as that same quality that had drawn her in was now being used to persuade a courtroom that she was the unreliable one. She was not awarded the full equity of the house. The legal fees ate into what remained. She downsized to a 2-bedroom apartment 4 miles away. She took on additional hours at the dental practice. She started attending a financial literacy class offered free at a local community center, not because she did not understand money, but because she needed to reclaim the version of herself who had always handled her own affairs. She told her story not in a courtroom and not to a journalist, but at a support group for survivors of economic abuse. She said the hardest part was not the money. The hardest part was the grief of it. She had already grieved her husband. She had done that work, slowly and painfully, and she had come out the other side. And then she had to grieve the marriage that came after, and the version of herself who had believed, completely and without reservation, that someone had chosen her because she deserved to be chosen. She said she no longer wears a ring. She said she is not sure she ever will again. But she also said this: the morning she found those letters on the kitchen counter, the morning she sat on the floor and called Danielle, that was the morning she stopped being a woman things happened to, and started being a woman who decided what happened next. If any part of Jennifer's story felt familiar, drop an emoji in the comments. You don't have to say a word. Just let us know we're not alone in this room. Stay with me, because story 2 lives inside a house that looked, from every angle, like everything a woman was supposed to want. Her name was Patricia. She was 50 years old, living in a 4-bedroom home in Naperville, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago known for its good school district, its well-maintained parks, and the particular kind of quiet that settles over a neighborhood where everyone has worked very hard to make everything look fine. She had 3 children, twin boys who were 14 and a daughter who was 11. She had a husband named Robert who worked in corporate finance and traveled to New York or Boston at least once a month, and came home on Fridays in a good mood that lasted through Saturday morning and then began, slowly, to thin out. Patricia had been a senior marketing manager at a mid-sized healthcare company before the twins were born. She had been, by every account, very good at her job. She had a reputation for being organized, for catching things other people missed, for running meetings that actually ended on time. Her colleagues had liked her. Her manager had told her, in her last performance review before her maternity leave, that she was on track for a director role within 18 months. The twins were born 6 weeks early. The NICU stay was 3 weeks. Patricia was pumping milk in a hospital bathroom on the day she was supposed to return from leave, and Robert sat beside her and said, quietly, that maybe this wasn't the right time to go back. That they had enough. That the boys needed her. That daycare for 2 newborns, plus their older daughter, would eat most of her salary anyway. That she could always go back later, when things settled down. Things did not settle down. They rarely do, when the plan is to wait until they do. Patricia left the job. She told herself it was temporary. That word, temporary, is the word she would come back to 11 years later with a different understanding of what it had actually meant. The years passed the way years do when you are busy. Not slowly and not all at once, but in the way that you look up one afternoon and realize the children who used to need you to cut their food are now taller than you and need you in different ways that nobody prepared you for. Patricia managed the school calendar, the pediatric appointments, the orthodontic consultations, the teacher conferences, the carpool schedules, and the 1,000 small negotiations involved in keeping a household of 5 running without incident. She managed the social lives of her children, the dietary preferences of her husband, and the emotional temperature of the home in the way that women who are very good at caring for others often do, invisibly, preemptively, and without credit. Robert was not a bad man. That is important to say, and it is also, Patricia would tell you, one of the most complicated parts of the story. He did not yell. He did not drink. He did not have affairs, as far as she knew. He was, by most external measures, a good provider and a present enough father. He coached 1 season of the boys' soccer when they were 8. He remembered birthdays. He bought her flowers on their anniversary, and sometimes on no occasion at all, which she used to find romantic and later understood was the extent of the attention he had available for her. He did not ask about her day. Not in any real way. He would say, "How was your day?" the way a person says, "How are you?" in passing, as a formality, not an inquiry. She learned not to answer honestly. Not because he had ever told her not to, but because the 1 or 2 times she had tried, had said, genuinely, that she was exhausted, or that she felt like she was disappearing, or that she missed the version of herself who had run meetings that ended on time. He had looked at her with an expression that was not unkind, but was unmistakably uncomfortable, and the conversation had shifted to something easier. So she stopped saying those things, and the part of her that had wanted to say them stopped presenting itself for consideration. And that, more than any single incident, is how Patricia disappeared. The moment that changed everything for Patricia was unremarkable on its surface. It was a Wednesday evening in October. She had made a chicken and rice casserole that she had made dozens of times before, a family staple that all 3 children had eaten without complaint for years. Her youngest son walked into the kitchen, lifted the lid on the casserole dish, set it back down, and said, without looking at her, "Is there anything else? I'm not really in the mood for this." And then he walked back out of the kitchen. Patricia stood at the stove for a moment. Then she turned off the burner. She sat down on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet and her knees pulled to her chest, and she stayed there for a long time. Not crying at first, just sitting. She had not eaten lunch that day because she had been driving back and forth between the orthodontist and the pharmacy and had not had time. She had not eaten breakfast because she had been packing lunches and making sure her daughter had her field trip permission slip. She had not slept well the night before because she had been lying awake thinking about whether the furnace needed servicing before winter and whether she had renewed the car insurance and whether the twins had returned their library books. She did all of this every day. She had done all of this every day for 11 years. And her son had lifted the lid on the casserole dish and decided he was not in the mood. She sat on that kitchen floor and she asked herself, for the first time in a very long time, a question she had stopped permitting herself to ask. When does someone take care of me? She did not have an answer. That was the most important part. She genuinely did not know, because the answer, in 11 years, had not once arrived. That night, after dinner, after the dishes, after the homework checks and the bedtime negotiations and all the things that did not pause because she was in crisis, Patricia opened her laptop at the kitchen table and typed 4 words into the search bar. How to go back. She was not sure, exactly, what she meant by back. But she started reading. And she did not stop reading for a very long time. Patricia spent 3 weeks reading. She found professional networks for women returning to the workforce after career gaps. She found LinkedIn profiles of women who had been out of marketing for 8, 10, 12 years and had found their way back. She found a resume consultant who specialized in what she called career reentry narratives, the art of framing 11 years of invisible labor as the leadership, project management, budget oversight, and crisis navigation it had actually been. She did all of this before she told Robert. Not because she was hiding it, because she had learned, over 11 years, that sharing a plan before it had traction invited other people's hesitations into it. And this time, she wanted the momentum to belong entirely to her before she gave anyone else the opportunity to slow it down. She applied for 4 positions. She heard back from 2. She had a phone screen, then a video interview, then an in-person interview at a healthcare marketing firm 20 minutes from the house. She drove to that interview in the same car she used for school pickups. She wore a blazer she had bought for herself on a Tuesday, without asking anyone. She was offered the position 6 days later at a salary that was 30% higher than what she had been earning when she left 11 years before. She called her sister from the parking lot outside the building. Her sister screamed. Patricia laughed, the kind of laugh that is also a cry and also a release. And she sat in the school pickup car in the parking lot of the firm that had just hired her back, and she felt, for the first time in a very long time, like herself. That evening she told Robert and the children at dinner. Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he said they would need to figure out logistics. Patricia agreed. She said she had already started a shared calendar with the relevant information. She had built it that afternoon. Her daughter looked at her across the dinner table and said, "Mom, are you happy right now?" Patricia said yes. Her daughter said, "You look different. You look like you." Patricia said she was beginning to think that was the same thing. If Carol's story, if Patricia's story, if any version of that kitchen floor is a place you have sat, drop an emoji in the comments. Because you are not alone in that room. And the woman sitting on that floor is not finished. She is just getting started. Stay with me for one more story. This last one is the one that started this channel. And it ends with something I want every single one of you to carry with you. Her name was Amber. She was 23 years old, and she had $12 in her bank account. Not $12 until payday, $12 total across every account she possessed. Her rent was 5 days overdue. There was a handwritten notice from her landlord taped to her apartment door that used the word eviction in a way that made it clear this was no longer a warning. She had graduated 18 months earlier from a state university in Tennessee with a degree in communications and $31,000 in student loan debt that was accruing interest at a rate she had stopped allowing herself to calculate because the number made her chest tight. She was working a temporary administrative position at a mid-sized logistics company in Nashville that paid $14 an hour and offered no benefits and had already been extended twice without any indication of when or whether it would become permanent. She spent her lunch break on Tuesdays and Thursdays sitting in her car in the parking garage beneath the office building, not eating. The vending machine on the 3rd floor cost $1.75 for a bag of pretzels, and she had started choosing, on those days, between lunch and gas. She was calculating, on one particular Tuesday, how many miles she could drive before the fuel warning light moved from orange to critical, when she realized she had been crying without noticing. Not sobbing, just the quiet, continuous kind of crying that happens when a person has been holding something too long and the body decides, without consulting the mind, to put some of it down. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and went back upstairs. She was standing in the office kitchen 15 minutes later, staring at the vending machine she had decided not to use, when a man in a charcoal gray suit walked in. She knew who he was by reputation only. His name was Donald. He was 56 years old, a senior vice president who had been with the company for over 2 decades and whose family, it was understood by everyone who worked there, had been instrumental in its founding. He was the kind of man whose presence in a room was noticed before he announced it. He had the particular bearing of someone who had been powerful for long enough that power had become invisible to him. He simply moved through the world as though it arranged itself accordingly. He saw her standing at the vending machine. He saw, without her realizing he had seen, that she had been crying. He did not ask what was wrong. He walked to the small refrigerator in the corner, took out a bottle of water, set it on the counter near her, and said, quietly, "Tough day?" She said yes. She was embarrassed. She looked away. He said, "You're doing better than you think you are. Whatever it is." And then he left. She thought about that sentence for the rest of the afternoon. It was a small thing. A passing kindness from a senior executive who had probably already forgotten it by the time he reached his office. She told herself that. She believed it. She was wrong. 3 days after the kitchen encounter, Amber received an email from the company's HR department informing her that her temporary contract had been converted to a full-time permanent position, effective immediately, with a salary of $48,000 annually plus benefits. She had not applied for the conversion. She had not been told it was under consideration. The email was brief and administrative and gave no explanation for the timing. She found out from a colleague that Donald had personally recommended the conversion to HR. Her colleague mentioned it casually, as though it were an amusing piece of office gossip, and then moved on. Amber sat at her desk for a long time afterward. She sent Donald a brief thank you email. Professional, measured, appropriate. He replied within 4 minutes. He said she had earned it, and that the company was lucky to have her. He said if she ever had questions about navigating the company or her career, his door was genuinely open. She went to his office 2 weeks later with a question about interdepartmental communication protocols that she actually did have. He spent 40 minutes answering it. He also, in the course of that 40 minutes, asked her about her background, her degree, what she had hoped to do with her career, what had brought her to Nashville, whether she had family nearby. He listened to her answers with a focused attention that she was not accustomed to. She was 23 and she had spent a year being largely invisible in that building. Someone that important asking those questions felt, genuinely, like being discovered. After that, the lunches began. Once a week at first, then twice. He took her to places that were outside her financial reality. Restaurants where the entrees cost more than her daily budget. And he paid without discussion, and he talked to her about her career and her ambitions, and what she was reading, and where she saw herself in 10 years. He introduced her to senior staff at company events as someone to watch. He bought her a book on negotiation strategy, and left it on her desk with a note that said, "Because you're going to need this." He told her that most people in her position took 5 years to learn what she had figured out in 18 months. She believed him. Why would she not? He had no visible reason to lie. And everything he had said about her career had, so far, been followed by something that made it true. What she did not yet know was that the attention had a direction, and the direction was not toward her future. It was toward her dependency on his approval of it. The shift, when it came, was gradual enough that Amber could not point to the exact moment it began. She would later describe it as the difference between water and ice. The same substance, the same relationship, but at some point the temperature changed, and the thing she had moved through freely became something she could not move through at all. It started with small monitoring. Donald began stopping by her desk in the late afternoon, when most of her colleagues had left. He would stand in the doorway and ask how her day had gone in a way that was not quite a question, more of an audit. If she mentioned a meeting she had attended without telling him, he would be quiet in a way that had weight to it. Not angry, just quiet, in the way that communicates that something has been noted. He started texting her on weekends. Not about work, precisely, but about things adjacent to work. Articles he had read. Podcasts he thought she should listen to. Questions framed as professional, but arriving on Saturday mornings in a way that blurred the line between mentorship and surveillance. If she did not respond within an hour or two, his next message would arrive with the word, "Thought you might have seen this by now," or "Just checking you got that." She started keeping her phone nearby at all times. He began making comments about her relationships. Nothing direct, just observations. A colleague she had mentioned having lunch with was described as not someone whose judgment I'd rely on. A friend from outside the company who had visited her during a work trip was interesting, said in the tone that means the opposite. Amber found herself editing what she shared with him, not because he had told her to, but because the texture of his responses had taught her what would land well and what would bring that particular quality of silence. Then came the afternoon he called her into his office, and she found her personnel file open on his desk. He said he had been thinking about her living situation. He said the area of Nashville where she lived was not ideal for someone in her professional position. He said he owned a rental property in a nicer part of the city that was currently between tenants, and that she was welcome to it at a significantly reduced rate, as an investment in her future. She told him she was fine where she was. He looked at her for a moment. His expression did not change. He said, "I've invested a great deal in you, Amber. I hope you understand what that means." She left his office and walked directly to the bathroom and stood over the sink with the water running and tried to name what she was feeling. It was not gratitude. It was not affection. It was the specific, cold clarity of recognizing that every lunch and every book and every introduction and every career opportunity had not been a gift. It had been a purchase, and she was what had been purchased. Amber went to HR. She had documented everything she could, the texts saved on her phone, the lunch receipts, which she had kept without knowing why, the date and substance of the conversation about her personnel file and the rental property, written down that same evening in a notes application she had started keeping after the bathroom moment. She sat across from an HR business partner she had never met and laid out everything she had. The HR business partner listened. She took notes. She said she would need to consult with her director. She said the process would require discretion on Amber's part. She said Donald was a long-standing and highly valued member of the organization and that any allegation of this nature needed to be approached very carefully. She said the word carefully 3 times in one conversation, and Amber understood, with each repetition, that the word was not being directed at Donald. She was told the matter would be looked into. She was told to continue in her role as normal and not to discuss the situation with colleagues. She was told she would hear back within 2 weeks. 2 weeks passed, then 4. When she followed up by email, she received a response that described the investigation as ongoing and thanked her for her patience. On a Friday morning 6 weeks after she had filed the complaint, she arrived at her desk to find that her system access had been revoked. Her badge still worked. Her email was still functional, but she could no longer access 3 of the 4 internal databases her job required. When she called the IT help desk, she was told the change had been authorized by HR. When she contacted HR, she was told her role was under review and that she should work from home for the time being pending further notice. No documentation, no timeline, no explanation. She sent one final email to HR, said to the company's general counsel, outlining the timeline of events from the original complaint to the revocation of her system access. She sent it at 9:17 in the morning. At 9:41, she received a call from a number she did not recognize. It was an employment attorney whose name she had found 3 weeks earlier in a moment of quiet preparation and written into a note on her phone beneath the word, "just in case." She had called him the previous evening. He had told her that what she had described was a textbook retaliation scenario and that she had a case. She did not go back to that office. Amber is not permitted to say the amount, but she is permitted to say this. It was enough to pay off her student loans. Completely. She did so on a Tuesday, sitting at the kitchen table of a 1-bedroom apartment she had chosen herself, in a neighborhood she had chosen herself, at a rent she paid from an account that had her name and only her name on it. She works now as an operations specialist at a nonprofit that supports survivors of workplace discrimination. She makes less money than she did in the logistics company. She has never, for a single moment, considered going back. She talks about Donald without bitterness, which surprises people when they hear her story. She says the bitterness would cost her something she is no longer willing to spend. What she does feel, and what she will say clearly, is this. The moment she told him she was fine where she was, the moment she sat across from a man who had, by that point, materially transformed her professional life, and said no, that was the moment the transaction ended. And the moment a person becomes herself again is always the moment she stops being purchasable. If Amber's story landed somewhere in you, if you have ever been in a room where someone's generosity came with a price tag you didn't see until it was already due, drop an emoji in the comments. You know what it cost you. You don't owe that to anyone else. 3 women, 3 different cities, 3 different versions of the same story. Jennifer, who met a man at a church potluck dinner 8 months after burying her husband, and who signed papers she did not fully read because she was finally, after a year of grief, too tired to be alone. Patricia, who sat on a kitchen floor on a Wednesday in October and asked herself a question she had not allowed herself to ask in 11 years, and who built an entire second life on the answer she found there. And Amber, who had $12 and a fuel warning light, and a man in a charcoal suit who told her she was doing better than she thought, and who turned out to be right, though not for any reason he intended. None of these women were naive. None of them were weak. None of them were, as the people who failed them suggested, misreading the situation or being too sensitive or making a scene. They were women doing what women are taught, from the time they are very young, that they should do. Trust the people who show up for them. Take care of the people they love, and believe that the world and the institutions within it will operate in good faith. The world did not always operate in good faith, but they did, and that is not a failure. That is a kind of integrity that the men in these stories will never fully understand, because it costs them nothing to exploit it. Psychologists who study recovery from coercive and manipulative relationships describe something they call post-traumatic growth, not the absence of damage, but the presence of something that grows in the space where the damage was. A clarity, a kind of knowledge that cannot be given and cannot be taken away because it was paid for at a price no one else can understand. Jennifer knows now exactly what a man looks like when he is studying her vulnerabilities instead of loving them. Patricia knows that a life built entirely in service of other people's needs is not a life. It is a negotiation that was never made equal. And Amber knows that the moment someone makes you feel that their help comes with an expectation attached, that feeling is not gratitude. That feeling is a receipt. If you are sitting with any version of these stories right now, if something in this video named a thing you have been trying to name for a long time, drop an emoji in the comments. You do not need to explain it. You do not need to prove it to anyone in this room. We will just know, and we will be here. This has been Synaptic Truth. Every story fires something new in you. We will see you in the next one.